please hit that subscribe button. Hey everybody, better suited to win the Stanley Cup this season. If you are new to the channel, Washington Capitals, the Boston Bruins.
Locked on and he scored! And we're live. Hey everybody, so we are back again today for another off-season recap video where we're going to be looking at the Colorado Avalanche. So Colorado, one of the best teams in the NHL this past season. They've really grown over the past few years into being one of the top teams in the league and a consistent Stanley Cup contender. Going to be looking to continue that this coming season. They were fairly quiet in free agency, but they were very active on the trade market, making a couple of big moves via trade, which I think certainly have improved this team and made them even more of a threat and maybe even the Stanley Cup favorites heading into this coming season. Now, before we fully get into it, I just ask that you please subscribe if you are new and hit that thumbs up button if you haven't yet. Both of those things help out so much and are much appreciated. But let's get into it here. Looking at the Avs offseason, their real big additions are only two of them, and they really came through trade. They really didn't do a whole lot of anything in free agency, but via trade, they added Brandon Saad from the Chicago Blackhawks in a deal that sent Nikita Zadorov back to Chicago, and they added Devon Toews from the New York Islanders, in which they only gave up a couple of second-round draft picks and then subsequently signed Toews to a 4-year contract. So they upgrade the top 6 forward group with Brandon Saad. They upgrade their defense with Devon Toews, and those are their major moves as far as adding to this team for this offseason. As far as subtractions, Nikita Zadorov obviously gone in the Brandon Saad deal. They also swapped AHL-level defensemen in that deal, but those are both just depth guys. It was kind of a wash. It was, as far as the NHL impact goes, it's Brandon Saad going to the Avs and Zadorov going to Chicago. Vlad Namestnikov left as a free agent. That was fully expected. They brought him in as a 1-year rental last season. And he moved on, which was fully expected. Matt Nieto also left in free agency back to the Sharks. Colin Wilson, he is a free agent, hasn't signed anywhere, probably may not, looking at the current market. Kevin Connauton, depth defenseman, and Michael Hutchinson, who was their third goaltender, who unfortunately had to play in the playoffs last year because of injuries, but he's gone as well. So, yeah, their losses, there's a number of losses there, but they're all depth guys, and none of them are really significant losses. They're guys that their time in the lineup were running out, and they probably weren't going to be playing any significant minutes, with the exception of maybe if they had kept Namestnikov, he could have been a bottom 6 guy on a regular basis, but the rest of those guys all probably weren't even going to crack the lineup. So they're not any real significant losses other than just depth pieces for the Avalanche. The big thing with the Avalanche this offseason was getting important restricted free agents re-signed, and they were able to do that while still staying under the salary cap and maintaining some sort of cap space here, which has been very difficult for a lot of teams with the flat cap, especially contending teams, but the Avs have been able to do it. Andrei Burakovsky is back. Val Nichushkin is back. Ryan Graves is back. Tyson Jost is back. So they were able to make these significant re-signings of RFAs that they needed to get done, as well as improve the top 6 with Brandon Saad, improve the D-core with Devon Toews, and all they really lost at all this offseason were a bunch of depth pieces. So with the young players that they have that could be ready to take that next step to the NHL level, Logan O'Connor, Connor Timmins, Bowen Byram potentially in the near future, Martin Kaut could maybe as early as this season. They've got a lot of young guys ready to kind of come in and fill those depth spots, I think, as well. So it's been a really solid offseason for the Avalanche. They continue to just make spectacular moves. Joe Sakic is an absolutely incredible GM. He's just made masterful moves with this team, and that's continued this offseason. So now I'm going to bring in a couple friends of mine from the Off Brand Avalanche podcast, Marshall and Billy. They have a great podcast focused on the Avalanche. They're both huge Avs fans. So I'm going to bring them in to talk about the Avalanche offseason and get their opinion on that. So Billy, Marshall, take it away.
How's it going, everybody? I am Billy from the Off Brand Avalanche podcast, and I'm here today with one of my co-hosts, Marshall, and we're going to give you a quick rundown of a very active Colorado Avalanche offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the betting favorites entering the offseason only improved their chances. We're going to be talking about some of their biggest trades that they made, a couple of free agent re-signings, and who we lost, and get into the draft a little bit.
Yeah, so starting out with the draft, because I know both of us were pretty big fans of what the Avalanche did in the draft this year. Going in, we knew we did not have a second-round pick, so we kind of had to make up for that with our first and third rounders, and I think the Avs did a great job. The biggest need we had was a high-end defensive prospect. We have Bowen Byram and Connor Timmins, who are both very, very good prospects, but also both about to graduate, and once they do, there's not much left there. So after, you're looking at Drew Hellison, who projects as a 7th D, maybe a bottom pairing kind of guy at the NHL level. So filling that need with Justin Barron in the first round was big for the Avs. They now have a guy that they can look at and say, well, if we lose someone in our top 4, we've got another guy coming up. So we feel really good about that. And then in the third round, they kind of a bit of a slider. Jean-Luc Foudy in the top 50 on quite a few of the boards going into the NHL draft. The fastest skater in this draft. This kid can fly. The reason he fell all the way to the third round where Colorado could snag him is because he's a bit of a raw prospect. He's got the speed at the NHL. He's got NHL caliber speed, but not much else. He is very raw. He's a project, but with putting in the work and some good development on the Avs part, putting him in the right leagues at the right times, there's a good chance this could turn into a real player at the NHL level.
Yeah, absolutely. Foudy is a bit of a project, but getting him in the third round, it's a risk that the Avs are willing to take. Justin Barron in the first round, late first rounder. I really like this kid. Little bit of a medical history with the whole blood clotting situation, but all his medical reports are checking out just fine. So we are pretty high on him and hope that both of those two can, enter into the NHL or the AHL level within the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, pretty exciting. The Avalanche definitely have a pretty high-end prospect pool thrown in those kids with, like we said, Bowen Byram, Connor Timmins, and even Alex Newhook over in the NCAA. So we like the future of the Avs, but we also really like the present. We've got a couple prospects ready to graduate, which is good because in free agency this year, the Avalanche lost a couple of bottom 6 forwards. Vladislav Nemesnikov was a 1-year rental, traded a 4th-round pick for him at the deadline. We got about what we expected out of him. Good middle 6 forward for a couple of months. And we pretty much figured we'd be losing him. And free agency, we did. We feel pretty comfortable about replacing him. Bump some guys up the lineup. We got some guys coming back from injury. We also lost Matt Nieto, who we picked up from the Sharks on waivers a few years back. But again, we feel pretty confident that we can replace him with a couple kids coming up in the lineup. When everyone was healthy last year, we were actually to the point where we were alternating scratches between Nieto and Jost anyway, so we feel good about it. We didn't lose anyone of major significance in free agency this year.
No, not at all, Billy. You said it. I'm hoping Martin Kaut can take that next role. And realistically, the only way that all 13 forwards that we had on, dressed up last season would get in is if there was an injury or a couple of injuries, because Tyson Jost was, riding the bench quite a bit during the playoffs until, the Avs were bit by that injury bug once again. Really confident in Mark Cout's game. He's going to slot just fine as a bottom 6 forward coming in right away. And, we lost those 2 guys, but, to be honest, like you said, it was expected, and the moves that we made more than made up for it.
Yeah, and let's talk about those moves because the Avs didn't do much in free agency. We went into this offseason expecting them to be aggressive, expecting them to try and make that push to become the best team in the NHL. And we expected that to come, at least between the two of us, we more hoping than expecting, but we thought Taylor Hall would be the move in free agency. That was not the route that the Avs went, but they more than made up for it with a couple of trade acquisitions. Going out first to Chicago, sending Nikita Zadorov to the Blackhawks, and then getting Brendan Saad back. There's also an exchange of AHL top end or maybe 7th defenseman at the NHL level guys, but that was pretty much a wash. What we really care about is the Zadorov for Saad. Zadorov, a guy that was an RFA, maybe didn't have a great fit in Colorado. Like we said, Bowen Byram and Connor Timmins ready to graduate and take that spot. So it was a move for a guy that was replaceable to bring in a top 6 forward, where the Avs, for the past couple of years, really last year, had a top 5. You know, they had the three-headed monster. They also had Andrei Burakovsky and Nazem Kadri on the second line. But that third piece of the second line has been kind of in flux. Sometimes it was Nichushkin. A couple times last year it was Nemestnikov.
Donskoy.
Now we've got it set. Yep, Donskoy in there a couple times. Now we've got it set. Brandon Saad can take that role. The top 6 might switch out a little bit. Maybe you break up the three-headed monster. Maybe you don't. But we have 6 guys now that we are confident are top 6 forwards.
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the biggest issues that Joe Sakic was going to go out and address, either in free agency or through a trade. We didn't get the biggest fish on the market, Taylor Hall. It was reported that we offered him a 1-year deal, but I guess Buffalo just offered him more money, even though Taylor Hall came out and said that he wanted, to play for a winner. But, money talks sometimes. Really happy with Brandon Saad. He's going to fit in just great in this top 6. And really that was one of the key pieces that we were missing from our run last year, and that's completely filled there. The other key piece was found in the trade market again.
Yes, and, we had pretty clear top 3 defensemen with Eric Johnson, Cale Makar, and Sam Girard. And then you had a mix of Ryan Graves, Nikita Zadorov, Ian Cole that kind of filled that spot. It was mostly Ryan Graves playing with Makar, but we knew he wasn't a true top 4 defenseman. The Avalanche said, you know what, we're going to go get one. We're not going to wait on Bowen Byram's development. We're going to go get one today. They traded 2 second-round picks to a cap-strapped New York Islanders team, kind of cut a little bit of a deal there to help make them some cap space, and brought in Devon Taves, then signed him to a 4-year deal. This was probably the more underrated of the 2 trades.
Yeah.
This is an excellent, excellent player. One of the things you have to mention when you talk about Devon Taves is the speed. He did the AHL skills competition a couple years back, did the fastest skater and won it. His time at that AHL skills competition would actually have come in 3rd at last year's NHL skills comp, behind just Matthew Barzal and Connor McDavid. So you're not just talking about a pretty good defensive defenseman with a little bit of offensive upside. You're also talking about a guy with some serious speed, and hopefully you can put him next to Cale Makar and have arguably the fastest top pairing in the NHL.
Yeah, absolutely. When going out and getting guys through trade or free agency, it's pretty important that you're going to be looking for fit, and Devon Taves is pretty much the definition of the Colorado Avalanche today. Just an absolutely solid puck-moving defenseman who really could fit in just fine with either Eric Johnson, Sam Girard, or Cale Makar. So that top 4 is also rounded out just like the top 6 on the forward side rounded out.
Yeah, so all in all, we are feeling really good about where the Colorado Avalanche are today versus where they were 2 months ago. We think they're a better team now than they were, and really at the end of the day, that's what you're looking for out of an NHL team's offseason. So that's where we are. We're happy with it. Thank you, John, for having us on the show, and for the rest of you, go ahead and check us out on Off Brand Avalanche.
Thank you so much to Billy and Marshall from Off Brand Avalanche for coming on. Be sure to check out their channel if you are interested in phenomenal Avalanche content. It will be linked down in the description as always. And they did a great job covering everything. There's really not much else for me to say. Colorado, I believe, got better this offseason. I mean, adding Brandon Saad to that top 6 is just going to be lethal. Really rounds out that top 2 lines for the Avalanche. And adding Devon Taves to that decor while only losing Nikita Zadorov, I mean, that's a significant upgrade. As much as I do like Zadorov, Devon Taves is a significant upgrade to that decor. So they've lost some depth pieces, but they re-signed all of the major players that they needed to re-sign. They've got some young guys that might be ready to make that jump up, and they significantly improved their top 6, and they significantly improved their decor. So this Avalanche team, I mean, they just continue to get better. They continue to be one of the top teams in the league. I fully expect them to be one of the top teams this coming season. They're probably my early pick for the Stanley Cup this coming year. I think them and your Tampa Bay should probably be the favorites heading into the season. But they've just had another phenomenal offseason, and I think there's no reason to think there's going to be any step back with this team. If anything, I think they're going to be even better than they were last year. So Joe Sakic and the Avalanche continue to do an incredible job of building this team and just really making them one of the top teams in the league. And that's pretty much it with them. They continue to be an unbelievable franchise, and I expect big things from them this coming season. So with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon, merchandise store, and donation link are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.